your drinking is a problem, drug use is a problem. No, the alcohol isn't the problem, the drugs isn't the problem. Those are the solution that you're looking for. That's the solution that you're using to try and deal with the problem, and going at it with, okay, I'm going to take away your solution without dealing with the problem isn't going to fix the person. It's going to make them feel worse. I mean, there's been so many cases of people, quote unquote, quote, getting out of their addictions, but then later on they end up going right back into it, or even committing suicide and stuff, because the root cause was never addressed. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Through the Mirror. Today we want to talk about something that's been affecting a lot of people since really as far back as human history goes. We want to talk about addiction, and to help talk about that, brought on a personal friend of mine, Nick Middaugh. And Nick's a self-published author. He's a survivor advocate. He's a speaker specializing in trauma, child sexual abuse, men's mental health. Um, and he was a former first responder. So Nick, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Happy
Yeah,
to have
thanks
you
for
both.
having me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Happy to be
Yeah.
here. Stoked.
Now, I mean, being in the men's mental health, I imagine addictions like definitely probably up there in the top three, top two things that, men struggle with. And just a brief idea, like what do you think is a brief overview of just addiction as a whole that affects, I could say, men specifically to start off?
Yeah, I think when so the bulk of my experiences, I had, like, my earliest childhood memories are sexual abuse. So you have that, but then what, even with the service related stuff, which is almost more of what I see just because I'm from that world of first response, is that you often have the mental health. And a lot of times that's like accompanied by some kind of self-medicating behavior. So whether that is, for instance, like police officers, firefighters, a lot of departments, you can't just go do like marijuana or some of these other illicit substances. So you turn to drinking because it's legal. You're not going to get fired for it as long as you're not like on the job doing it. Or you turn to prescription medication, things of that nature. So, um, and in that world, like, I find it often to kind of zoom out a little bit with my story. I never went to formalized treatment for substance abuse. So, like, I never went to AA, never hit a rehab, never did. I'm not against those things. It's just I never did. And the reason for that was because I didn't want my coworkers to find out, my teammates to find out, and then think that I'm somehow like unreliable, um, unable to do the job, right? And that's where that with men, that's where a lot of that stigma comes through. That's why a lot of dudes don't talk about it as much. And I think that you have like a festering period there with men because
Uh-huh.
like we're going to medicate and we're not going to talk about it until it
Mhm.
gets to the point where everybody knows. And usually by
Mhm.
that point you're in a very sorry state of addiction. So it's just a downward spiral there. Instead of catching it at the top of the funnel, you catch people in the middle or toward the bottom.
Well, I think that's like something I see, as a rampant issue, and I'm in a lot of circles, and then I'm a naturopath. And one of the things that you focus on as a naturopath is the whole person. So everything comes to play: emotions, your physical body, all of that matters. And I found that a lot of people don't get help. Like they don't want to like have these real conversations. Say, I just need help and I don't know what to do. And it doesn't matter what it is. Alcohol, I feel like, is actually more acceptable. But if you say, "Oh, I'm addicted to porn, medication," self-harm, these things don't get talked about, and then you're like on your own as a man. Like in society, if you come out and say, "Hey, I'm having these struggles," it's a bunch of judgment and shame. And why on earth would anyone get help? And then you go, "Oh, what's wrong with society?" And it's like, well, nobody has a space to come and talk about this. And then, I'm a woman, so I feel like this is another area I see is in families and like even relationships, you have to be able to come to terms with this stuff might be going on or this stuff could be happening. And who are you going to be when that person comes to you? Are you going to shame and degrade them and tell them they need to shut up, keep it a secret, whatnot? Or are you going to encourage them to get help and help them? So I totally agree. I see that a lot. It's a rampant problem.
Yeah, we think we're like unique or something. We just
Well,
gotta
everybody
find.
feels
Invincible.
unique to whatever they've gone through, their specific experience. Everybody has a sense of, well, nobody can put themselves in my shoes. Nobody's gone through what I've gone through specifically because, I mean, everybody's own pain is a unique experience to them. So, and like you said, feeling like that you can't talk about it because you'll be looked at as lesser and you can't, which boils down to, a little bit of an ego thing too, is you don't want to be looked at as a failure or looked at as lesser. So I can't tell my friends, I can't tell my partner, and I got to be strong. If you got children, I have to look a certain way for my children. So it could even be a protect them thing. You don't, because that's its own thing if you're putting your problems on your children as well. So that suffer in silence almost becomes it, it's like compounding shame and
Mm,
compounding guilt to where but it gets worse, and the worse it gets, the more guilt, the more shame. And like you said, people don't really start either getting help until it's like you can't hide it anymore. It's gotten so bad that, anybody can see it. And then it's like, how did it get to this point? And really, I was too ashamed to talk about it. I mean, and that's, I think, one of the biggest ones at least in America right now. And I think it's for men and women is pornography. Pornography is one of the most rampant, addictions, maybe in the world, but definitely in Western culture. It's like, but it's also like normalized, and even in our generation, and then it's in more the younger generation, it's become well, everybody does that. Everybody
yeah.
watches that, it's like, because it's such a rampant problem that people have more like started to take ownership of it and almost be like, everybody does it, and it's so out in the open. So I guess besides it getting to the point where it's just spilling out all over the place and you can't hide it, like what are some ways that people can start to feel okay with sharing and going and getting help with that before it's reaches that, rock bottom, absolutely destroyed your life type thing?
Mm. I think a lot of it has to do with, like you kind of hit on, like it's so much related to your image. There's so much ego there, right? So, and that's, I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. That's my kids.
It's
Anyways,
okay.
no, but there is so much ego and there is so much like image there. You don't want people to think that you're not reliable. In my case, I didn't want my teammates to think that I wasn't capable of doing the job or like I was lesser than somehow. Um, so when it comes to like reaching a point where you can start making repair before you get to a point where it's just out in the open and you're in that spiral, you're in that vortex. Um,
Mhm.
you have to really focus on. I think, I think you need to be reflective enough to catch it. Um, and a lot of that goes into, and I mean, I guess there's a lot of nuances there with where we could go with this, but what's your opinion of yourself? Like
Mhm.
chiefly everybody thinks of themselves. we're so worried about looking different, appearing different, seeming different, being called different. And that's what everybody else is thinking. They're all
Mhm.
thinking that about
I
themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's
and
like, okay, so there's some of that, like, we don't need to be so worried about the image, but we need to be reflective enough that we can catch it. You know, whatever this, I say, a moral behavior, whatever it is, that we're engaging in, because I think it's not a value judgment. When you're addicted to a substance, you tend to engage in a lot of immorality. To continue your use, you're lying to people, you're manipulating people, you become a little narcissistic. At least that's how I was. Um, so recognizing that you might have a problem, reflecting on it, and being like, you know what, like, who cares if other people find out? I
mhm,
need to talk to somebody. I need to establish some kind of support system.
mhm.
Um, like, get over myself and get out.
Yeah, and I think it's deeper, and this is the part, like, you can go to, the meetings and go to therapy and all these things, which they all have a place. But I think once you have awareness, you have to find out what is the root cause. Because it's not just that you're in an addiction. There's a reason for the addiction. The addiction didn't start because you started drinking alcohol and you liked it. Now you're addicted to it. There's a reason that you are at this point. And I think it starts way before we ever even picked up the coping mechanism, before we ever got addicted to a substance. And like in your case, you just mentioned being abused as a child.
Hmm.
That's something that, a lot of people are like, well, I'm addicted because of this, and that. And you like dig in. And it's like, oh no, this goes way back to the roots of something much deeper. And a lot of time it's in avoidance. You don't want to feel those emotions. You don't want to go through that. And then there's not a lot of people to coach and help you through that process. Like once you have awareness, if you don't have a path forward, a solution, um, a way to take that awareness and provide action, then this is why people go right back into their addictions. Because now you have awareness and now you have even more pain because now you see it. Right? And I think there's not a lot of help in that area, and then for men, it's like you'd actually have to talk about your feelings, and for a lot of men, that's terrifying because we're taught to be in the society, you're supposed to be tough, you're not supposed to have emotions, you better just suck it up or you're not a man, and I mean, this is a big problem too in this area.
All the old tenets of traditional
Well,
masculinity.
and the emotions that are okay are, like rage and anger, like that's been
Anger.
accepted and okay by society. The even abusive, well, this is the thing, come home, have a beer, leave dad alone because he's had a bad day, and we've normalized that because again, that's suppressing the emotions and what's going on. But I think Andrea hit the nail on the head with these addictions are a coping mechanism for something, whether it's in your childhood, something in your past that you haven't, allowed yourself to face or gotten through. And the thing with a lot of modernized tools, whether it be, therapy, and there's a place for therapy and stuff like that, but just pointing out the problem or saying, you have a problem, your drinking is a problem, your drug use is a problem, and then saying you need to take it. No, the alcohol isn't the problem, the drugs isn't the problem, those are the solution that you're looking for. That's the
Mhm.
solution that you're using to try and deal with the problem. And going at it with, okay, I'm going to take away your solution without dealing with the problem isn't going to fix the person, it's going to make them feel worse. You're then, I mean, there's been so many cases of people, quote unquote, quote, getting out of their addictions, but then later on they end up going right back into it, or even committing suicide and stuff because the root cause was never addressed. And you see that all throughout even our healthcare system with, treating symptoms, not the root cause. And we somehow think that it's not the same with mental health and addiction too. There's been so many more studies coming out proving how childhood trauma, stuff you go through childhood affects you in your adult years with addiction, with health, with disease, and all this stuff. And not a lot of people are talking about it. Not a lot of people are figuring out how to cope with that and get through it in a healthy way. And I know, with what you're talking about, with what you went through as a child, I'm sh- I, I'm sure that played a huge part in a lot of the stuff you went through as an adult on a subconscious level. You don't consciously know why that stuff was starting.
Yeah, they say the body keeps score, you know,
Mhm.
and there really is. There's something there with that. Um, and a few things like I've done a lot of research on child sexual abuse, child on child sexual abuse, um, the things that I went through as a 5-year-old. Um, and in my case, I never repressed the core memories of it.
Mhm.
So in between gets a little bit fuzzy, but no adult put a stop to it. Um,
Mhm.
kind of like inadvertently, my mom kind of did. I had a conversation with her where I wasn't being completely truthful, um, and managed to kind of put a stop to it because of that conversation. But if you look at that data, um, I mean, dudes who go through that are something like 11 times more likely to become intravenous drug users. They're 3 or 4 times more likely to become alcoholic. They they struggle with employment. They have a higher incarceration rate. They have a higher homelessness rate. Like they have all the things.
Yeah,
And
sure do.
especially when you compound it with um, silence. Like I didn't say anything about it for over 20 years. I just
Mhm.
was just living rent free in my head, and would play quite often, sometimes every day for years. And it really did influence a lot of my drinking. I moved out of my house, my childhood house at 18. I had experienced alcohol before that, like any high schooler, I think.
Mhm.
Nothing super unusual there. But at a certain point, I'm on the fire department at 17. I'm going to these fatalities. I got this thing that's going on, from my childhood. And at a certain point, I started looking at alcohol as a way to just escape. I could just
Mhm.
shut those things off. I could just go to sleep. I wouldn't have to lay in my bed and stare up at the ceiling fan and think about all this awful shit or how terrible I was feeling. I could isolate in my apartment, have all my drinks, and go to sleep like a baby. And, by the time I hit 21, it was like the floodgates were off. Um,
Mhm.
heavy, heavy, heavy drinking every night for several years. And
So, sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
just want
You're
to
good.
ask, I, in what point did, in what point did this change for you? What point did you go, I'm done with this. I need to find solutions. And I know you said you didn't go and get to normal health, so I'm looking forward to that story.
Yeah. So that moment came several times. Like
Falling forward.
more, yeah, like more than I could probably put a count to. Yeah, initially, I hit like a 6-month period in 2019 where I was able to get sober. But I did it for the wrong reasons. We can get into that later. But uh, somewhere, so the day that I quit drinking was September 9th, 2021. And I haven't had a drop since. And I would say that it was because of my second kid being born.
Mhm.
And I think there is maybe a little bit to that. But I already had a child and I already had a wife before that I couldn't get sober for. I kind of had just arrived to a place where I realized I don't need to live like this.
Mhm.
I don't deserve this. Like I had to find the value in it for me. And it
Mhm.
kind of sounds fucked up because a lot of people want to tell you, "Hey man, quit for your family. Quit for your
Mhm.
son, quit for your wife, quit for your job, quit for your future, whatever." Like,
Preferably.
and those are great things. Like I can't discount them, but I couldn't do it for my family because I
No,
didn't love
and
myself.
What if they
yeah,
disappeared tomorrow? What if they all died tomorrow or something? Then what do you have to live for then if you're not doing it for yourself?
Right. Right.
yep.
Uh, I think
Oh,
you have to
and this is
have. Go ahead. Sorry. No, you go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead. Do it.
I say this a lot, and I've learned this lesson hard in my life too. Is on the opposite spectrum, I guess, is you can't change anyone; they change for themselves, and that is the only way real change happens. And I think having change for your family, change for your friends, change for your this and that, but it's at the end of the day, if you're changing for anyone else but you, you're not going to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So I had arrived to a place where I was just sick of not loving me. Um,
Mhm.
throughout all of my use, throughout a lot of those years, I mean, I have dealt with suicidal ideation since like high school. Um,
Mhm.
just in the gutter, and that guilt that you were talking about earlier, Trey, like that shame, that guilt. Like every time I would try to quit and I couldn't, I just hated me so much, and it
You
just compounded.
reinforced why you were doing
Yep.
it. Like you just yeah, it's
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
think
I would look
Trey
in the
said
mirror.
this. Yeah, Trey said this last week on the podcast, but you can't guilt and shame yourself into changing. It doesn't work that way.
Oh,
And that's what's taught, religion and not religion. That's what they teach you. Oh, if you hate and shame and belittle yourself, then tell yourself these things enough, you'll quit. And I'm sitting here like, no, you won't.
oh.
You will stay here forever. You can just change out mass. You can replace, and a lot of times, addictions like alcohol and drugs and porn, they're the big ones, right? But we don't talk about the addictions of switching out from those things and switching it for religion, switching it for, you know, working all the time and going overboard because you are still running. You are running from yourself and you will never outrun yourself. It will find you and it's
Hmm.
ugly.
Yeah. I used to joke that I operate on uh, coffee, nicotine, and rage. And those things
Oh
may take
my.
you far, but they will not take you as far as self love and positive self talk. Um,
Mhm.
they just won't. I mean, I think that was part of the struggle when I initially got sober and it only lasted 6 months is because, well, there's a few things there. But number one, I quit for the wrong reasons. I quit because, um, just to be honest, like my wife gave me an ultimatum. She said, "This is the umpteenth time that I've found alcohol stashes throughout the house. I thought you quit. You didn't. You've been doing it behind my back. It's me or it's the alcohol." And I had a moment of clarity and said, "You know what? I'm about to lose this amazing woman, and that means also my child. So I'm going to get sober." Uh, and that was my reason. That was my anchor.
Mhm.
And it was all the like negative self talk. It was like,
Mhm.
look at how much of a piece of shit you've been. You used to be in shape. Now you're like 280. And you put on a uniform that is supposed to embody all these things. And like, you're not doing that. The moment you take it off, you're none of that. You're the exact opposite. Uh,
Mhm.
and I had also convinced myself that this was like somehow temporary. Like I could do moderation someday. I'll have a drink someday. I'll be all right. But for now, we're going to like get over this problem and we're going to address these things. I didn't address any of my mental health either. I
Mhm.
didn't go to therapy for any of the service related stuff. I didn't talk to anybody about the CSA.
Mhm.
So when I went to Top Golf with some family and they were all drinking, and I decided, I'll toss a few back. Uh, within 2 or 3 weeks, I was back to drinking heavily every night.
Yep.
So when I finally did quit, it really was that I got to do this for me. And it
Mhm.
started there. And as I got more sober and started to achieve longer term sobriety, then I realized, oh, like if I'm working on myself and I'm doing this for me, that's going to make me a better husband. Like, this
Mhm.
is going to make me a better father. This is going to make me a better employee, better friend, whatever it might be, whatever my responsibilities are. If I'm working on myself and I'm doing this for me, because Trey, you hit on it, like, people die, jobs come and go, friends come and go. I've Irish goodbye entire relationships. Like, just
Mhm.
sometimes that's just what happens. Um, and unfortunately, in today's world, an astounding amount of marriages fall apart, and
Mhm.
that's just what it is. So there is no, at least in my opinion, there is no such thing as stability. Like, there is no such thing as controlling anything outside of, like, right here. This is it. This is all
Mhm.
you get control over, and even that can be hard sometimes, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So,
Nothing is more challenging when when you get out of the fog, you get out of the patterns in your life and you like get out here and you're like, you know what?
life in 4K.
Life in 4K. And you're like, who is causing when you it's I saw a post today and it's so true. It was taking ownership in your life is taking ownership of the suffering in your life that you are causing. And it's like when you
Mhm.
sit up there and one of the things that your mind and emotions are literally running your life, the ability to stand back and go outside them and look at them and go, okay, that's interesting. Not react to them, not suppress them, but go, huh, wow, what was that? That's interesting. And you start seeing you. Whereas, like
Mhm.
I joked with Trey like 2 weeks ago, but I had, dropped a bowl of rice on the floor. And I'm the kind of person that I would never call you stupid or anything for dropping rice. But man, did I call myself stupid. And I was like, Andrea, like you just called yourself stupid for dropping rice. What is that? And it's that, that sounds really stupid and small, but that was like what was that really? You. Why would you do
Mhm.
that? Why would you talk to yourself that way? You would never talk to anyone else that way, but you were okay with it. It's those little weird things, right?
Yeah, you got to take care of your opinion of you because you
Hmm.
become what you tell yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that's the challenge in life. I think this is like, I wrote a long post about this actually today. But, you see society, you see the families, you see your inner circles. And one of the most bravest but scariest thing that most people are unwilling to do is to actually look in the mirror and see what it shows you. And that mirror is often extremely hard and ugly if you've had a life of pain and suffering. And you can see how that's, that expression in society where we're so afraid to look in the mirror and now look at what is happening. Nothing's really changed. It's just more obvious, right? That pattern is now expressing. It expresses through families, it expresses through politics, it's expressing in every way because we're coping through life. We're not living. Like you're in the past or you're attached to an outcome in the future. So you can never truly live in the present in that state of being. And most human beings are in that, at least in like America. Like that's the rat race, the nonstop, the social media feeds, all of it. And
Mhm.
when you finally wake up to that, it's like, oh my gosh, why would sitting here enjoying my life finally feel anxious? And you're like, oh, because I'm addicted to this horrible dysfunction I've lived in my whole life. And that sounds insane, right? When you say that out loud, it's like, that's crazy. I know this is good for me, but I feel unsafe in this and safe in pain.
Yep.
Yeah. Pain,
Yep.
pain starts to be is
Pain.
a familiar friend. I mean, there's a saying around that too, around alcohol, isn't there? Like that, like my that.
Comfortably numb,
Yeah, I mean,
maybe.
Yeah.
it's just it's so true, and you see this in family dynamics all the time, where you almost pass down a type of coping mechanism, whether it be, I mean, it's smoking was a big one and it's still a big thing, and now you have it more turning into a vaping for the younger generation. But that's again one of the, I would say that's even more socially acceptable than drinking, because there's no impairment like that, you're of getting drunk. But gosh, I mean, I smoked for a long time, and it's that people, you try getting off nicotine for a while, like people, there's a switch that turns in on people too, where you become a very irritable, mean, very short fuse person just because you don't have a simple coping mechanism. But you see family, parents, kids watch their parents on how they deal with problems in their life, how they deal with stress, how they deal with pain, and they learn from that, good or bad. If you have good, healthy parents that, hey, I'm a good father, a healthy father that can regulate his emotions. It's like, man, I've had a long day. I'm going for a run. I'm going in a walk in the park. I'm getting out in nature. I'm going to go dig a hole in my garden bed or
Yeah, that's
something
what
like
Robbie
that.
says. Yeah.
Give
You
it a
know,
shovel.
yeah, I've just simple stuff like that that isn't destructive, but and there's people think they have to get rid of what they think is negative in their life, but it's not about getting rid of negative parts of yourself. It's realizing that um, there's a broken part of you that can be transformed, and you can take the pain and transform it and go, instead of whether it be going to alcohol or pornography or smoking or something like that, you can actually have an outlet that improves your life, whether that be, you know, working out or being in nature or, starting a business and putting your energy and creative energy into that, being super intentional and present with your children and your partner, and realizing that you were never truly just broken. You're just getting to a place before you lost sight of who you were.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. There's a lot of what I write about. And there's a few things there too, but a lot of what I write about is like adversity's teacher, adversity's lover. Adversity is like faithful companion, right? Like life isn't going to be like this notion of, oh, we're gonna have happiness now. It's like, I don't know. I don't think it's happiness. I think we should strive to be content and to be content in what we have and what we do. And like that's not to say use content as a reason to not pursue things. It's not what it means at all, but to seek contentness. And there's so much like my day job, I work in foster care and I look at these kids and I see, even though my circumstances were a lot similar in some ways and different in others, I see so much potential because like, man, if you can take that trauma, if you can take that pain, you can, if you can convert it into fuel, because that's what it really is raw material. It's a challenge. It's, am I able to extract something from this instead of it extracting everything from me? And like being able to change your perspective. And like that's not saying that mental illness isn't real or that feelings aren't valid. Like I really struggled with mental health for a long time. And I'm human. I go through periods of day-to-day life now where I'm like, man, I'm like ready to fight and I'm in a Kroger. Like, what's going on, man? Like there's some problems here. But I need to go rock or something. Like I need to get it out. But there truly is something to, like, if you can take, if you want to use me as an example with some of this, if you can take the compulsion that you had as a alcoholic or addicted to a substance or addicted to porn or whatever it might be, if you can take that compulsion, that drive, everything that you engaged in, like the endless pursuit to get the next like little bit of sauce, to continue your use, everything, all the ends that you went through, like I would go like look in dumpsters for recyclables. Okay, I see a can on the side of the road. I'm stopping to pick it up. I would ask people for money at the gas pump. Like I was on the verge of homelessness often, And it was all in the name of pursuing that drink. And I would do everything I possibly could, lie, cheat, steal, whatever, to continue that drink. Being able to convert that compulsion into something positive, into something healthy, dare I say, into a goal. In that 4 years of getting sober, 4.5, I went back to college. I got a degree. I became a federal contractor. Like I reached heights in my profession that I didn't think I would ever reach. I wrote a book.
Well,
I have done all these crazy things, and there's, I blame my faith for a fair amount of that, but it's just converting that drive. You have so much power in whatever has happened to you. You have so much potential, whether it's the addiction or it is just the trauma itself. If you can tap into it and just go, use it as fuel,
yeah.
right? I wake up, I'm depressed. I have an option. I can lay in bed, I can be mean, I can let that feeling control me, or I can put my backpack on and I could go hit the trail, convert it into something good, try to see like what's going on with this. Why am I feeling this way? What do I need to address? And use it as fuel. Move forward. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
awesome stuff
I
there.
think I think in that too is a wise friend uh, told me this a long time ago. But there has to come a point in time where you're not just surviving anymore from pain. Yeah, we all have trauma. Some is more horrid than others, but I think what it comes down to is when you can accept after addressing what happened to you, after going through feeling and changing, you have to accept the past because it doesn't exist anymore. So it only exists when we reinforce it in our minds. It only exists when we keep going back to that space instead of going, all this is wisdom now. It can either be wisdom or it can be an forever cycle of being stuck in the past, right?
Hmm.
So if you transform that, you don't like, I tell people this all the time. There's got to be a point where you stop being the survivor and start being to that point where you are transformed. You are not that anymore. You are not in that anymore. And now you're going to build the life that you're meant to be in, your purpose, your truth. What is your purpose? Who are you without the pain and all these things that happen? That's
Hmm.
the real you. And
Mm.
I like what you said about, you have, I tell Trey this all the time. You got 5 seconds. You have an emotion come up. You're depressed. You're angry. You can either react to it and let it destroy you for hours, or you can go 5, 4, 3. Oh, okay. What am I going to do right now instead of sit here in my head? Because that's a big problem, right? We're living in our heads. And if you sit
Hmm.
here living in your head, you're going to have these festering, awful things going through your head, and it's going to steal your present moment away. It's going to steal your beautiful life away from you. And why? Why let it? You already suffered enough. Why continue this?
Yep.
And I think that's a really important part of healing. That's the part, I tell people you can sit in therapy all you want. You can sit in these meetings all you want. You can talk about your trauma over and over again, and nothing will change if that part doesn't happen, the part of acceptance. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean you
Mm.
sit there and you go, yeah, I'm okay with what happened. It doesn't mean you're okay with what happened. It doesn't mean that you're in denial. It's just, what other choice do I have but to accept and move on?
Yep.
It's like a person, like if you have a broken leg, it takes time for you to heal and work through that. The cast, maybe there's physical therapy involved and stuff. But after your leg heals, imagine if you decided to be like, well, because I had broke my leg was broken. I'm gonna keep this cast on. I'm gonna still be using these crutches and go throughout the rest of my life as the person who broke their leg. And you never take the cast off and you never go back to
Right.
living as if before your leg was broken. That's the whole in my that's the whole purpose of doing inner work and doing this growth and healing and getting through this stuff is you're stripping away all the stuff that was keeping you from being you. Before you broke your leg, you were you. Once your legs healed, take the cast off and go run. Go be you again.
Yep.
But people hit this block when it comes to the emotional and mental aspect of that. People can do that physically, and it's an easy concept physically, but when it comes to the emotional aspect of it, people have such a hard time part of that I think is because emotions and and even the past can feel so overwhelmingly real, and it takes a certain level of mental discipline to be able to go, okay, what I'm experiencing right now is not reality. What this emotion that come up, this flashback, this nervous system reaction to this is just that. It's a reaction. It's not based in reality in this present moment. That is a response to, in most cases, a child that didn't get what he or she needed at that time. And having, that self-awareness to be able to go, oh, that's what this is, and work through that. And on the other side of that is the freedom that I'm not no longer bound by that. It doesn't affect me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's this thing in the spiritual and, healing growth community where people identify with that healing journey with, growing, and you're always, healing your traumas and doing inner child work and getting through this and getting through that. And people get stuck in that instead of being like, oh, hey, no, I'm actually living my life. I'm living like you're always growing. You're always improving yourself. If you're not growing, you're slowly dying, right? But
Mm-hmm.
at some point, you're like, no, I've dealt with this. I think one of the hardest parts in healing is deciding that you're healed, that you've worked through that, and it no longer dictates you now. It doesn't. You're not carrying that with you. You don't have this is what happened to you, what happened in the past is not a cross that you have to carry the rest of your life. That's not what life's supposed to be about. You're supposed to enjoy, and like you said, be content, be at peace. And that
Mm-hmm.
in order to experience happiness, there has to be, how do you know what happiness is? It's because you know it's sorrow is, what pain is. There's the, opposite. There's going to be both in life. It's how do you handle it? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I relate to I would almost call it sympathy Olympics that we see
Mhm.
online and social media because, and I don't mean that, I mean it in a little negative way, I'm going to be honest. I don't mean an overt negative way, I guess, because people go through what they go through. Um, but like when I put out the book and I started this pursuit, this advocacy thing,
Mhm.
I was still hanging on to, oh, I'm a male CSA survivor, and
Mhm. It's a
I
trap.
guess you kind of have to put that out there a little bit because, like, okay, yeah, I am. And this is why I have relevancy in this topic is because I went through it. But, I went on Beyond the Monsters a few months ago with the not sole intent. I wanted to talk about a lot of things, but one of the main things I wanted to talk about was, that was kind of misguided of me because I've come to realize I was just at a different point in my own healing journey, right? Because the turnaround between when I told my mom and dad and started talking to my friends about it to the book being out was, I think, less than 2 years. And then all of a sudden I'm on like these platforms I didn't think I'd ever get on. Uh, so I was just at a different point. I seeded it. I seeded. I viewed it. I viewed it differently. Uh, and now the way that I view it with all of it is I'm not a survivor. I'm not a victim.
Mhm. Yep.
I am me today. I will be
Mhm.
this tomorrow. Hopefully, fingers crossed. That's what we're working for. And I'm just not, there's so much of that. We want to identify with the thing that hurt us so bad. And then like, there's like the credence and there's the empathy and there's all the social media credit that we could get from it.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that, like that wasn't my intent starting out. Like I write. I want to be a writer. I'm an author. That's what I do. I'm really bad at doing the whole phone thing and like trying to record myself. It's just not what it is. But God, it's so cringy. Anyways, no, seriously, there really is something to that. Like you have to cut the tether between you and whatever made you a victim. And then eventually, like, yeah, you're going to feel some shit. It's going to be real. I suffered for a long time. I tried to
Mhm.
kill myself. It was hard. It was tough. I was addicted to a substance for a very long time, and I blamed it all on the trauma from my childhood, and I blamed it all on the trauma that I willingly went into when I put on those uniforms. Nobody forced me to be there. I volunteered.
Mhm.
That's on me. And that's what ownership and accountability to me looks like is, hey, we're going to own the not just as much of the circumstances as we can because I didn't choose what happened to me as a child. So I can't fully take accountability of that part. I can own everything I did as a response. I can own my actions at the time, even though I was a kid. I can look at it empathetically, like, yeah, okay, kid me was in a real rough spot, but I'm gonna, like, that's still me. I'm gonna take accountability over it empathetically, but then everything as an adult, I'm not gonna blame anybody else. I am
And I
going
think,
to, like,
yeah.
move forward and get meaning. And, like, there's so much that I write about with Frankel. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm so sorry. But
No, you're good.
I just want to say this one last thing, right?
I do the same thing.
So, yeah, but no, there's so much to one of the people that I quote heavily with my Substack character's destiny is Viktor Frankl. He's this dude who survived Auschwitz and some other
Mhm.
camps during the Holocaust. He's a
Yeah, he is.
psychiatrist. Yeah,
Mhm.
and his whole thing is like meaning making. Where are you going to find purpose? Survival is not supposed to be an eternal thing. We're supposed to
Mhm.
survive and then move forward, find new meaning, find new purpose. So,
Yeah. And I think
yeah.
ownership gets mistaken here. I think ownership doesn't mean you deny or take on the blame or responsibility of something that someone did to you. I think ownership is just
Yes.
saying, you know what? Nobody is coming to save me. Nobody can fix the past. It doesn't exist. I can't live waiting for an apology, right? Because, like, that's another thing. Like, people, oh, I'm just waiting for someone, like I said, I forgive you for, and you'll be waiting there to the end of your life, especially with some of this stuff. Taking ownership is saying, I am going to take ownership of me and nobody else, no other situation in this matters anymore because it's just going to be me taking the reins of my existence. And it's not going to be
Hmm.
dictated by the past and I'm not going to be dictated by fear of the future because life is hard. Like this idea, like you mentioned, that everything's just going to be great and I'm just going to finally make it to happiness is like, no, this is the human existence. Have you looked at the last thousands of years of life on Earth?
It's
Life
messy.
is hard. And yes, adversity really will push you into growth if you take the opportunity. Some people don't. Some people become the victim, the perpetrator, blame and shame and all these things, and they stay right in that slump and they never leave it. They can be there until the day they die.
Hmm.
But if you don't take ownership of your life, you're going to be walking dead already because you're going to be stuck in that pattern and you'll
Yeah.
never be free. And it'll be the prison of your own making. And that's actually a very sad place for a lot of people in today's society.
And
Drowning in
that's
Lake
the
Me.
thing, the social media thing that you were talking about, Nick. People find these groups to validate the victimhood, and that becomes a prison and something that because it does feel good, and then there is something to be said about you said empathizing with somebody and processing what you've gone through. Like you need to feel the feelings that you weren't able to process as a child, because the body remembers, the body will trap those. I mean, that's part of the process, but it's so easy to get trapped in that point where it's like you're getting all the, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened to you. That's so terrible. We're so sorry. And you get stuck in this thing when what it really is you're substituting those apologies, that empathy that you wanted from the really what you wanted from either your parents or the person that wronged you. And it's like, well, if I can't get it from that person, I'm going to get it from these hundreds or thousands of people in this group or online. And it becomes another form of addiction because you're trying to fill a hole that can't get filled. You can't fill it with alcohol. You can't fill it with pornography, and you can't get it from people understanding what you went through and sympathizing with you and, giving you all this validation on how much of a victim you are. That is not going to make it go away. It's not going to fix it. The only way to there is through it. I mean, that's one of the whole reasons for the, I mean, the name of the podcast, Through the Mirror. You have to look at yourself and then you have to go through it. And it's so easy to get in that trap of that that sympathy from people because your nervous system almost feels like, oh, this is what I've been waiting for since a child, is to feel seen, because people want to feel seen,
Yep.
especially, you know, men, when they first start talking about something that happened to them after suppressing it for so long, because, oh, you weren't allowed to, you weren't allowed to feel, you weren't allowed to express it, and you go, oh my gosh, I feel seen for the first time. It's really easy to get trapped right there because you haven't your entire life. So
Getting that
yeah,
sweet validation.
you gotta, again, one of the biggest steps I think in getting in healing and growing is deciding I'm not a victim.
Yep.
You making that conscious decision for you, I'm not a victim anymore. Because in a sense, being a victim means that whatever happened to you still has power over you and still dictates who you are and what the rest of your life is going to look like. And if something horrible happened to you, I mean, especially if somebody did something horrible to you, they have no right to destroy the rest of your life.
Hmm.
They don't have to. That's not theirs to take from you. They can't take your whole life from you like that.
Yep. Yeah, there's some pretty. I was talking to some folks over at Supriya about this a little bit recently, and man, part of I wrote this paper, this essay rather, and it was about violations. So talking to the other dudes that who went through something similar to what I went through, and going back to that victim label, like it's so important to get the empowerment that you just talked about because like you said, I mean, it's just I don't know. Maybe it's going to sound a little again, I got to preface this with I'm not trying to invalidate anybody's feelings because it's a tricky road to walk because you have so many people that are like, "Oh, you were a victim. It's okay. Like you're a survivor. It's all right." Like and I see it so often, especially over on like LinkedIn, of like that is people's whole identity. And if it helps them get stages, it helps them get stages. Cool. But um the there's nothing more, in my opinion, emasculating to a man who has gone through some kind of sexual abuse than sitting there and trying to hook that label to them 20 some years after the fact, 5 years after, 10 years after, however long it takes for him to get through that shit. Like, no, I'm not a victim anymore. I don't want to, I don't want that to be my thing, because that's what you're doing when you are telling him he's a victim. Because especially with like CSA, we already struggle so hard with, I wasn't tough enough, I wasn't strong enough, I wasn't fast enough to get myself out of that situation. I couldn't defend my bodily autonomy, right?
No.
So like that's really, really devastating for dudes. And so to continue to toe that line of victim, no, that's not empowering. No, that's the opposite. You know, I'm going to say no, fuck that. I'm not a victim anymore. 5-year-old me was a victim. I'm 30 years old, right? There's a big difference there. Okay. I got hair on my face. I'm capable now. I'm not, and I'm not going to identify with it. I'm going to find new labels that I can earn. You know, so like all of that happened to me, and it really sucked. It took everything from child me. Again, I'm not trying to invalidate anybody's feelings. That's the last thing that I would do,
I think
because
it's
I've
the
been through it.
stages, right? Because there's the
Yeah.
denial part, right? There's a lot of denial in that. Like, oh, you
Right.
run from it. And then there's a stage where you actually do have to acknowledge, yeah, this happened to me. And
It's
there's
like a
a point in
triage
time.
almost.
Yeah. And then you have to move on. Like, you can't stay in the triage point, right? You can't
Hmm.
stay in that, because then you don't get to move on and you don't get to grow. So it's not invalidating the feelings. Yes, there's all these stages in
Mm,
this next level. But yeah, like you said, you can't just stay there.
you can't.
And I see this a lot with people that come to me with their health issues. Like, I tell people the body is whole. Like, the whole you has to be addressed. You can't just sit here and focus on a diagnosis, focus on one thing. It's always going to be this whole individual you. And that looks different for everyone, including even in
Mm,
this area. Healing is not a blueprint. There's not a blueprint I can hand to you, Nick, and go, follow this and your life will be fine. It does not exist. But
right.
there's
Right.
tools. You know, me and Trey talked about this last week. There's tools, and you got to find the tools that you need to get through this and to heal and to grow and then to be transformed. And I don't see that a lot in society in areas. And that's really great what you're doing, because then you can sit there and go, hey, here's my experiences. Here's the opportunity for you to have some tools. Which one works for you? Let's figure this out.
Yep. Yep. I like to tell people, and a lot of those tools I write about over on Substack, but when I talk about like what I do now, there
Mhm,
is the advocacy and there is that point of trying to be a voice that actually talks about this as a dude, because
mhm,
you know, another data point that's really shocking is over 50% of CSA victims across the board, male and female, report abuse from another juvenile. And that's a
mhm.
very uncomfortable conversation to have,
Yep.
because I don't blame the other kid. How could I? He was a kid. He was perpetuating what happened to him onto me. I have no doubt in my mind that he thought that this is just an acceptable thing to do with someone you love and trust. And for him, that was me.
Mhm,
But, you know, to get back to the tools and everything, is like, I've been through that river. I'll be on the other
mhm,
side, muddy, tired, soaked, bloody, offering you my hand. Like,
mhm,
I've been there before, not with everything. Obviously, everybody experiences things differently, and it's really
mhm,
important to recognize that. But a lot of the tools that I do try to hand people are philosophical. Um,
mhm,
Things like Epictetus's nightly audit. There's a lot of Aurelius that I've been a big fan of recently. This notion of seeing your misfortunes as gifts. I think it's like Meditations, book 4. Uh,
mhm,
you know, unhappy am I because this has happened to me. Not so, but unhappy am I. Like, or but happy am I? Like, being able to see your circumstances differently, take ownership and accountability of everything that you're going to do now versus, you know, everything that I did as a drunk, that's still me.
mhm,
I'm taking accountability over that. I don't call it a disease. I don't call it anything other than that was my response to all the things that I was going through, and I'm going to own that fully.
mhm,
And what comes with that is the ability to change what I now own, right?
mhm,
So every day going forward, I'm taking accountability over what I eat, taking accountability over whether I drink or not. I'm taking accountability whether I get some exercise, like everything. What am I going to, like, what am I doing? And every day it's a choice. But,
Mhm.
to get back to some of those tools and everything, it's so important. And I think it's a really I wouldn't say, there's certainly a lot of Stoic writing and philosophical writing out there, but to be able to have the lived experiences that someone like me does, um, and translate a lot of those ideas into the modern era. I think a lot of what we see in the broader society, whether it's with trauma or, pick your cultural issue,
Mhm.
this one we're talking about addiction, a lot of it has to do with your character, I think. And that's the whole spin that I put on it is we've engaged in a lot of immoral behaviors as an addict, um, and perhaps in our lesser healed state, traumatized state, maybe we made some decisions that were not great, but that's how we got through it. These things damage your morality. So a lot of what I write about is character, like moral repair. What does your character look like?
Mhm.
Not just what does your character look like when things are good. What does it look like when your friend dies? What does it look like when your job fires you? What does it look
Mhm.
like in day-to-day life, no matter the peak or the valley? This is what we're focused on. We were focused on character development
Mhm.
continuously. Because the other thing with addiction, I think, and I think it's similar with, swap out your substance, swap out your behavior, whether it's pornography or
Mhm.
whatever it is that you were addicted to, it's always going to be effort. It's going to be continuous effort. So why should, we should look at it this way, and if we can sufficiently craft, repair, build, um, garner resilience around our morality, I think we got a pretty fair shot.
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah, and
that's, that's a lot of what I do.
I think a lot of it'll come from changing and healing because when you become the best version of yourself, and that is the goal every single
Hmm.
day in the present, then that is who you are going to be. It's not going to be maybe someday. It's not going to be this or that. It's going to be no, I am choosing to be transformed. And now I'm going to walk in what I've learned. Because, you see it all the time, right? People can read 1,000 books, go to all the coaches, go to all the meetings, and they never embody what they actually learn. And I
Hmm.
think that's one of the big things. It's like you have to actually become what you have learned. You have to actually apply the tools. You have to actually live the way you are speaking that you want to live. And I think that's another issue is a lot of people are just wearing masks. It's all
Yep.
oh yeah, I'm doing this and that, but deep down you're actually not, or your entire life is about self-image. And part of what
Hmm.
I wrote today was about that. It was we're so worried about our image management, but who are you really? Who are you kind or are you nice? And
Hmm.
kindness is not something that you can, have a mask on for. Kindness can be really mean. Kindness can be you sitting down with someone going, "Hey, you're ruining your life. You better do something." And that's kindness. It doesn't feel good, right?
Yep.
But that's
Yep.
honesty and that's truth, and there's no mask there. Being nice means you're always putting a mask on. A lot of people will tell you if they're in addictions and these patterns that, oh, I was just everything looks great on the outside, but inside, right? Behind closed doors in the four corners of my family, everything was hell. But
It's
everybody on the
different.
outside, oh, he's just such a nice guy. I have known people, that got out of abusive relationships or, unfortunately, or the woman ended up dead. And everyone's like, oh, he was such a nice guy. And I'm like, yeah, he was a nice guy. He wasn't an honest
Hmm.
one and he wasn't a kind one. And people really need to start knowing the difference in all of that.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, I'm really appreciate you coming on the show. I know we're past our hour. I want to give you a chance. Where can people find your Substack to if they're wanting to get help or work with you?
Yeah. You can type in nickmiddaugh.substack.com and it will take you to Character is Destiny. Or you can conversely, look up www.nickmiddaugh.com. I'm sure those things will be in the show notes. And come check it out. I will say, like, if you like long essays with itty bitty little tiny ones in between, then this will be your jam. At some point, I am going to. And I should say off the top, it is free, unless you're feeling generous. At some point, I will end up narrating all of them. That will probably be behind a $5 a month subscription cost. But yeah, and if you go to my website, you can find all the other shows that I've been on and podcasts and everything like that. If you so choose that you want to hear me talking and seeing this mug from different angles, they're not great, but it is what it is. Yeah. No, I thank you for having me. It's been a pleasant conversation, and I know that we were going to talk a lot about addiction. I feel like I was kind of a little all over the place with you guys, but hopefully, if you're out there and any of that touched you, hopefully it's been beneficial. Uh, yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh,
Great.
well,
Thanks for coming on. I'm looking forward to the Substack. I'm a love to read.
Heck
yeah,
yeah.
guys,
Awesome.
the Substack will be in the description below. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Appreciate it.
Have a good night.